Hello everyone and welcome to today's video in which I will be showing all of the UK Beatles Apple singles. So this is going to be the last video showing their original UK discography. So the Beatles' first single on the Apple label was released in 1968 and that was the unbelievable double A side of Hey Jude. Hang on. I'll take it out of its sleeve so you can see this better. So we've got Hey Jude, and we've also got Revolution on the other side, I should say. Now this is a solid centre copy of Hey Jude, and because it's in 1968, EMI was still putting the sold in the UK text on all of their albums and singles, but that would vanish in 1969. So this is a nice solid centre copy here. Now on the next copy I'm going to show you, it's going to be a push-out copy. That is a copy with a push-out centre. However, if we look up here with the R5722, the R, as you can see, is under the bracket in the 7. It will be slightly further to the left so that it kind of sticks out to the left of the bracket. And here is that next copy. I'll just take it out of the sleeve. Right, so let's have a look at the label. So as you can see, this one is not a solid centre, it's a push out. And if we look over at the R, hopefully you'll be able to see now that it is to the left of the bracket up here, and that's because there's a bigger space between the R and the 5722. So that's a nice little variation. One thing I will point out while we're on this part of the label is the 7XCE bit, and that means that the single's in mono, and all of the Beatles singles have been pressed in mono up until this point, and then we'll do for the next couple of singles, I think. But by the end of the decade, so by 1970, Beatles singles will be in stereo, and this 7XCE will no longer be there. But we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. So anyway, back with the single itself. It's got the soul in the UK text and everything, and it's identical to the first copy I showed you in every way. There's Revolution. And this copy has a KT tax code on it. And it also comes in an Apple company sleeve. It's not the nicest condition one, unfortunately, but this is an Apple company sleeve. And I do really like the Apple sleeves. Now this next copy of Hey Jude is pretty much identical to the last one I've shown you, except the colour of the Apple label is slightly different. And this isn't uncommon with Apple singles, to be honest. You do get a few different coloured apples. But anyway, I'll allow you to compare the two. So this is this copy here, and I'll quickly get my previous copy. And here's this copy. So this copy has more of like a vibrant green, whereas this copy is more of a sort of almost pale green, yellowish green. So as you can see, two different colour apples. I wouldn't particularly say one was earlier and one was later as such, but it just shows you the variations that you can get in the colour scheme. Now this next copy isn't anything different to the ones I've already shown you. However, this copy is slightly different. Now before I show you that one, I would just like to quickly refer you back to the very first copy that I showed you. And that was the solid centre one. Now if we look back up at the R5722, you'll remember that the R on this record here was beneath the bracket and the 7 of the 7XCE. Now the push-up versions that I showed you, the R was slightly to the left of the bracket. However, this one here, if we look, the R is actually pretty much exactly under the 7 and not really under the bracket at all. So on this particular copy, the R is actually to the right of the bracket rather than being either underneath or to the left. So once again, just like with the Parlophone singles, it's ridiculous how many minor variations you can get. Now this next pressing of Hey Jude is actually something really interesting. And this is a Philips contract pressing of Hey Jude / Revolution. Now the giveaway feature is that this push-out centre is attached with only 3 prongs rather than the usual 4 prongs as on this one and every other Beatles single. So this only has 3 prongs, and that's how you tell it's a Phillips contract pressing. Now you can actually get 2 different variations of this. You can get one with just regular smooth labels, and you can also get one with textured labels. But they're both equally hard to get, so if you can find one with three prongs, then I would definitely recommend picking it up. But anyway, here it is. This is a nice little oddity. And I'll show you Revolution as well. Unfortunately, it's got a bit of writing on the top there, but that's nothing too bad. Now, this next copy of Hey Jude is hands down, in terms of condition, one of my worst Beatles singles ever. Let's take a look at the label. Not only has it been horribly ripped and it's got horrible writing on, it's also got a couple of pictures of, well, there's Paul McCartney on the left, and I can't quite work out if that's George Harrison or another picture of Paul McCartney. But anyway, it's got a couple of pictures on it and a horrible tear and some writing. But yeah, I just thought I'd show you that. And here's the back, which is equally trashed. Got some horrible sticker residue and lots of writing. Somebody called Gillian, spelt 2 different ways. It's got a J at the bottom there, and it's got a G on the push-out centre, so that's interesting. So yeah, whoever had this copy didn't look after it too well, but oh well. Shows its history, I suppose. Alright, so we now move on to the next single, Get Back. Now, for the remaining Apple singles, there aren't actually very many variations at all. Some of them only have just one variation, so these shouldn't take too long compared to Hey Jude and Revolution. So here's the single. I'll just take that. Right. Here it is. Again, solid centre. It is 1969, but this will be pretty early on in 1969 because they haven't taken away the sold in the UK text yet from the centre of the label. And 7XCE, so we're still in mono at this point. And the B-side, an excellent song, Don't Let Me Down. Shame it wasn't on the Let It Be album. Now there is a tiny variation between this copy and the next one, and I'll attempt to show you it, but please don't worry if you can't see it, because it's tiny. So if we look over at the P1969 credit, hopefully you'll be able to see that the P here is just underneath the S and the N of Northern Songs. Now on the next variation, the P will be more under the O in songs here rather than the S. So here it comes. Okay, so here's the second variation. Hopefully you'll be able to see that the P has now moved further underneath the O in songs, so that's not directly under the S and the N. But again, don't worry if you can't really notice it, because it's a tiny little variation. And here's the actual record itself. In every other way, it's the same as the previous copy. Solid centre. There's the back. And my third and final copy of Get Back is exactly the same as the previous one, the version 2 there. Except it's not as quite good a condition, because it's got MK written on the A side, and the B side's quite dirty, as you can see. So yeah, this copy isn't as nice. Okay, so we now move on to one of my personal favourite Beatles singles, and that is the Ballad of John and Yoko. So I'll get that one out. So here it is, once again on the solid centre. 1969 with us all in the UK text. And here's the B-side, which is Old Brown Shoe, a George Harrison track. Okay, now once again there is a tiny little variation coming up, and that is that the P in P1969 is in between the S and the O in songs, and that will have moved ever so slightly to the right on the next copy. Alright, so hopefully you'll be able to see that now. The P is not really under the S at all, and is under the O in songs. But again, please don't worry if you can't see these, because they are very minor variations. And we now move on to the penultimate Apple single, and that is Something from Abbey Road. and this is George Harrison's one and only A-side in the UK. So this is the only George Harrison Beatles song to be released as a single. Aside that he got one before the end. But anyway, I would like to draw your attention to two major changes. The first is that the sold in the UK has vanished in the middle of the label, and that's because we're into sort of mid-1969 now, and that's when they took off the sold in the UK text. But perhaps even more importantly than that, if we look over here, rather than saying 7XCE, it now says 7YCE. So that means that this is in stereo, and obviously the next single will be in stereo as well. But 7XCE means mono, and 7YCE means stereo. And this single is backed with Come Together, which is also, of course, from the Abbey Road album. And I've got a duplicate copy of that here, so that's just the same. Something Come Together. But next up, we have the Beatles' Let It Be. Now, if you saw last week's video, you'll have seen the Strawberry Fields Forever picture cover. And I mentioned that that was one of two picture covers released in the UK. And the other one is Let It Be. So, this is really nice. And once again, I believe it's the same as the USA picture cover. So here it is, Apple Records, the Beatles' Let It Be. And if you look on the back, you know my name, look up the number. So let's take a look at the record. This is a solid centre copy as well. 7YCE, of course, for stereo. And this is 1970, the last UK Beatles single release, or at least until like the anthology stuff. So there that is. And the B-side is, of course, as said on the cover, you know my name, look up the number. Probably one of the Beatles songs I've heard the least. I think it would have to be a toss-up between this one and The Inner Light, between the Beatles song I've heard the least. I think I've actually heard Revolution 9 more than I've heard this song. And the final single I have here is just a duplicate copy of Let It Be. This one doesn't have the picture cover though. Alright folks, that is the end of this singles video, and I've got plenty more singles videos to go showing miscellaneous UK singles, sort of like reissues and stuff like that. So there is more UK stuff to go, but this is just the end of their original 60s discography, if you like. And I've also got stuff from other countries, so I've got American stuff, Japanese stuff, other countries. I've got plenty more single stuff to show. However, I'll be doing a couple of more interesting videos in the near future, including a video showing how I clean my UK original white albums that I get, because some of them arrive in a complete state, and I do buy them like that, and I go through a certain process of repairing them and cleaning them, and I'm going to be doing a video showing you just how I do that, in case you find that interesting and helpful. But anyway, that's me waffling away, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all next time.